Betty Marton has an upcoming workshop entitled Bite-size Memoir. Is that?
Mm-hmm. That's it. Bite-size Memoir.
Yeah, and I invited her today to kind of talk about that and delve into the meaning behind it, kind of how it started, where it started, and what it is today. So welcome, Betty.
Thank you, Irma. This is great. I do love the opportunity to talk about this because it's been something that's so important to me. And it developed sort of spontaneously. And I should have the actual dates and years and whatever, but I don't. It was several years ago. And I became interested in Instagram because it's a cool social media platform, and I'm a writer, and I have a journalist training, and I have always been a freelance writer, so I've worked with a really wide variety of organizations and individuals. I used to write, the largest chunk of my career was writing for foundations and writing about the projects that they funded. And
what foundations?
Carnegie Corporation, Rockefeller Brothers, Wallace Foundation, and many others.
The Omega Institute you wrote for a while?
That was one of the nonprofits. That's not a foundation, but that was Omega was one of my most pre-pandemic clients. Yep, really great stuff. Loved writing for them. And no matter what I'm writing about, whatever the project, whether it's a project to enhance civic engagement in Kosovo years ago, or bring HIV/AIDS education to children in Africa, or wherever. I mean, I'm just trying to give a scope. What mattered most to me was the story of the people who were involved. That's what always held my interest. And in fact, even going back, I used to write for the telephone company for their employee newsletter, and I would really love writing about cable splicers and people who created different fiber optic technology, because they're people. And when you talk to somebody who's passionate about what they do, the story comes alive.
So you had a curiosity that you brought to the skill of writing. The curiosity kind of.
I am professionally nosy, or I'm nosy, and I've been able to channel it into professional. I think a lot of journalists would cop to that. So yes. And I started some years back working with people who wanted to tell their story. And I've done it in a bunch of ways. And out of that, I sort of labeled my business in your own words. Because what I would do is I would sit with people who didn't want to write. They weren't writers. They wanted to tell their story. So I sit, and I continue to do this. People who talk, I take notes, and then I write it up. It's really quite that simple. But my job also is to help guide them in a way that allows their story to flow so that it can be read more easily. So it's not a transcript. It's not that I tape it and then offer a transcript. It's really a version of their story that flows as a story using their own words.
So in your own words is the name of your business.
Right.
Right. And that is something, and what is there a, I can add a link to it,
I have a website. Yeah.
Do you know the,
IYOW, in your own words, publishing.
But the initials,
Yeah, IYOW Publishing. Right.
publishing.com.
.com. I think it's .com. There are a bunch of in your own words out there. Anyway, yeah. So that's one way that I've worked with people is they talk, I write, I send them what I've written, they make changes, we discuss what else needs to be done, what's not accurate, needs to be fixed, whatever. Other ways people are writing their own story. I just finished working after 2 years, 2.5 years maybe. No, just a little over 2 years, with a woman who's now 96. She lives across the country. She's in Santa Cruz, and she has a big story, and she wanted to write it. And she's one of these rare people who's actually a better writer than she thinks she is. So that was great. And she would send me a chapter at a time, and I would edit it. So just functioning as an editor to create consistency and flow. But it's her writing, her language to help move it along. Yeah, and 18 chapters later, she's now working with somebody to help insert the photographs and get it published. It's a really valuable experience.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I developed these very intimate relationships with people, and it's not always a whole life story. Sometimes people just want to talk about an event.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with a woman who really wanted to capture changes that occurred during her first year of retirement. So we focused just on that.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be anything. It can be small, it can be large, it can be spoken, it can be written. But then, back to Instagram. Oh, I know what it was. The anniversary of my mother's death, her yard site. And she died, as I mentioned to you, a long time ago. And I wanted to post a picture of her and write something about it.
Yeah.
And that's what started it. I found that I would look at these photographs from my past, and which I never really spent a bunch of time doing. I'm somebody who has old photographs in boxes, not in albums, not organized. I don't pull them out a lot. I don't spend a lot of time. They're not up on the walls of my house. It's just not something that occupied as documentation a lot of my thinking. But I found that when I pulled up a story, a photograph, and started to write about it, that I went someplace I didn't expect to go.
Mm.
That I learned about myself in the writing.
Yeah.
I learned about my relationships with people. Now my family, so we're, basically Eastern European Jews, the majority of whom arrived at the end of the 19th century. So been around for a long time. But also people who don't talk about their past. Very common to that generation. Some people grew up with a lot of stories. I did not grow up with a lot of stories. Nonetheless, I would say look at a picture of my paternal grandparents, who I knew very little about their background. In fact, it was only after my grandfather died that we learned he changed the name from Smaradinsky to Marton. I mean, they never talked about it. It was the age of assimilation. It wasn't the age of looking back. It was the age of moving forward. I get that. Anyway, he was from the Ukraine, by the way. And came here in 1892 or something. Anyway, I could take a picture of, say, my maternal grandparents, and I didn't need to write about what I didn't know, because I didn't know a lot about their background, but this whole story would emerge about my relationship with them what I did know of them meant to me, how it shaped me. And it was just, still, it is. It's an incredible process. I find it so expansive and revealing. And I think, and this goes directly to bite-size memoir, one of the reasons. So back to bite-size memoir. The value of it being bite-size is almost contradictorily that structure, which I got from Instagram, is 22. It only allows 2,200 characters.
And this is Instagram only allows a certain amount of characters, and that's how you kind of started writing when your mom passed away. You put it on Instagram, or no?
Right. Well, I didn't. Yes, I did. I didn't write. I didn't write when she passed away. I mean, she'd been gone for like 40 years, or by then she died when I was very young. But I was right. That was the first photograph that sort of led me into this. And I don't think I wrote that long the first time. And I ultimately came to learn that, well, you can only write so much on Instagram. Most people only write a few lines, but you can write, I don't know how many words it is. It depends on the size of the word, 2,200 characters, maybe about between 250 and 300 words. Or maybe less than that, whatever. And that structure provides, it requires an economy of language, but that doesn't limit where you can go. In fact, for me, and it seems to be for the many people who've taken my workshop to this point, it allows, or it requires, maybe both, for a depth of thinking so that you choose your words to really convey the most. So it's a structure, I keep thinking about, raising children. When I was raising my children, I always felt having structure was really important, that it kept them safe. It kept them, it just allowed them to expand because they didn't have to worry where the boundaries were. They knew.
It created a kind of container, a safe container.
Beautiful, beautiful words. And I think this bite-size does the same thing. It gives you a way to explore deeply a subject that comes from a photograph.
Yeah, and we were chatting the other day, and I was connecting it to some of my coaching training, and that, at the very beginning, a big piece of it is, to work with your clients, but to, instead of trying to look at the whole picture and an entire life, chunk things down. And so it made me think of bite-size, because the structure that you've created through your workshop, Bite-size Memoir, is that chunking down. It's so a person doesn't get so out here that it kind of takes the focus away, and the structure that you've created makes it an easier process, especially if you're just getting started. Because, if you're overwhelmed and you've got all these things all over the place, going around in your mind, it would be hard to bring them all in and bring them all together. The way you have things structured and set up, including the photos. And I was thinking this morning that saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. Other way around too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly right. I thought about that as well. Yeah. And it's, we also, so many of us tend to think linearly. So when we think about our story, we think about it in terms of when we were this age or when that happened or whatever. And when you use a photograph as a jumping off point, it doesn't have to be that.
It doesn't matter where you start.
Not only does it not matter where you start, but it doesn't matter where it takes you. So, for instance, I
love that part.
Well, and that is the whole thing. It doesn't matter where you start, And it doesn't, and the exciting piece of it to me is that you don't know where it's going to take you. And this is my experience when I write about my own photographs, and very, very much seems to be the experience of, the people that I've worked with. One of my favorite stories, my most poignant stories, although I love many of them, the ones that I've written, and I'm not saying this because I think they're so great or anything. It's just been the
But they are.
Well, they are for me, because the experience of writing about them for me has just been, it's like these little jewels.
Yeah.
And anyway, my uncle, I have an uncle who died when he was 99 and a half. And he was an uncle that I was really close to for the first 6 years of my life. And
the foundational
years. And after that, it was just kind of disappointing. But I never stopped to really think a whole lot about it. It wasn't a mystery to me. I kind of understood it. I understand our family dynamic and yada, yada, yada. But sitting down, I took a picture of him and me. I wish I could just pull it up and show it to you. When I was a little girl, less than 6, probably like 4, on his lap. And he was in the prime of his life. He was maybe 39 or 40 or whatever, not even. And it was just, all I had was that photo and the fact that he hadn't died yet, but he was 99 and he was on his way. And it just allowed me to capture the essence, the love and the disappointment, the connection and the distance. And it was just one of the most satisfying things that I ever wrote.
Oh.
And I've been able to do this again and again and again in different degrees.
So where do you keep, when you go through something like you just described and then you write it and it has such an impact on you, is that something that you kind of keep private for yourself, or is
it? No, I posted it.
You posted it.
So, okay, good. Thank you for that question, because I think this is really, really important. So why do I post it? Why do I share? And I've asked myself this question a lot. I share because, I grew up in the era where, don't make too much of yourself. Don't put yourself out there, be in the background, whatever. That's the message I sort of got going.
Don't get too big for your britches.
Don't get too big for your britches. Modulate, that was my father always said to me. So there's this inner ancient prohibition to putting myself out there. But guess what? I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And people want to be seen. People want to be heard, whether you're an artist, a musician, a writer, potter, whatever you do. It's human to want to communicate and share. So
and share and connect through that sharing.
Well, and exactly that. So I find, and this is really important, Irma, I find that when we are, and I know you're going to get this, when we're really honest, when we dig deep and we write our stories as honestly as we can, as genuinely as we can. So I don't want to say honest mean you need to share every gory detail that might hurt or expose. It's not about that. It's about being genuine. It resonates far and wide. People don't have to have known my uncle, don't have to have had my same experience in order to connect with it. But the genuine humanity, the genuine human emotion that we get to when we write these nuggets touches far and wide. People relate. And that's why writers, artists, whatever, share what they share in order to awaken something in other people who, I never thought about it like that, or you know?
Yes. Yes. So if we wanted to read, say, the example you gave of your uncle and how that was so impactful for you when you wrote it, how do we find your writing?
Thank you for asking. So my stories are on Instagram under in your own words. I think it's in underscore your underscore an underscore between each word, in your own words, and that takes you to my name. And
Could we also find you through searching by your name?
I don't know. Does
Oh,
Instagram work that way? It's possible. I'm not sure.
okay. Okay.
I
So
also
I can
post.
also add a link to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've also posted that. I also post them on Facebook under in your own words as well.
Okay.
So they're in both places. And a few of them are on my In Your Own Words website, but not all of them. So the other thing that I have to say, in case people do go searching for me, that as you know, over the last year, I lost my son, 20-year-old son, 15 months ago. And since then, that's what I've been writing about. And so the first, I don't even know how many pieces, because Instagram is arranged chronologically with the most recent pieces first.
Okay.
And you can scroll down a person's feed to see everything. But my Instagram page, as it were, and my Facebook page, as it were, are, the most recent ones are writings about grief and about what I've gone through and been going through and continue to go through since then. Mm-hmm. And I will say that putting those, number one, the writing has been incredibly important to me to do. And I've also gotten an enormous amount of feedback that, once again, my experience specific to me touches the wider humanity. So people have found that my words are useful to them, which is, what else does a writer want to hear? Nothing, as far as I'm concerned, but that's me. So,
and didn't you, was there like a title? Wasn't it like chapters?
I did also, right. So they're in the individual segments on Instagram and on Facebook, but on medium.com, which is a platform that anybody can sort of write and publish on. Mm-hmm. Medium.com, under my name, I've compiled all of those writings about my loss, about the last year and 15 months. So they're all in one place there.
And chapters of grief?
What do I call it? Loss in many chapters, something like that. I don't remember. Something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's an easy link. If anyone's interested in reading about that, that's all. They're all in one place there. Mm-hmm. But the In Your Own Words, the Bite-size Memoir pieces are on the Facebook and the Instagram page. They're just further down.
Okay.
Find one of the old photos, and that's what it is.
So In Your Own Words is the name of your business, and that structure is a different structure than Bite-size Memoir. Bite-size Memoir is the workshop that you offer, which is coming up.
Right. I'm starting a new one on Wednesday. It's a 2-hour workshop, Zoom.
Is that June 8th? Wednesday, June 8th?
Wednesday, June 8th. Yes, thank you. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but yep, Wednesday, June 8th, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And the way it's really a pretty loose structure. We work with each workshop. People sign up for 3 consecutive weeks, because over the course of 3 weeks, a group dynamic and a sort of intimacy develops. It's a beautiful thing, whether there are 3 people in the workshop or I've had as many as 7, more than that. I think it's too many.
Mhm.
Because what we do is I offer a few writing exercises to help people, just begin to think and see a little differently. And then we have 2 timed periods where people write about their own photograph, and usually about 20 minutes. And then in between each timed writing period, we read. And the reading is incredibly valuable for all of the reasons that I described, right? Sharing your writing is important, but reading out loud and giving the other workshop participants the opportunity to respond is beautiful.
A real intimacy takes place, I would imagine.
It does, exactly. It's so, and we all recognize, I give guidelines for how to listen and how to respond, but everybody recognizes, these are works in progress, and but they're strewn with nuggets of gold, and it's just fabulous. And sometimes people will work on a piece for all 3 weeks, or for 2 of the 3 weeks, or 2 of the sessions. Sometimes they'll just start a new piece each time. It's really up to the individual. There's no, set format that way. But I feel that, I provide a structure and a place. That word structure keeps coming up.
It's an important part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. A structure and a place where other, structure to write, a place to share, and where other people can give feedback.
I do like the word container, but I would add to this, connecting to your bite-size memoir workshop, I would add a sacred container because of the safety that it sounds like is developed, because I would imagine there's no judging or criticizing or comparing within,
Yeah, it is very safe. Thank you. That's true. It becomes a very safe container, especially when you hear certain sentiments that you may be trying to get at or whatever reflected in somebody else's writing. You realize, right, I recognize what that person is getting at, and it makes you feel seen, understood, heard.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So
Only once. No, go ahead.
There's a lot, it sounds like there's a lot more to it than a desire to write a memoir. There's a lot that happens within the workshop that may surprise people.
I hope so. That's my goal. And people who come to this workshop, and I've been doing this now for a couple of years, actually pre-pandemic. That's true. The first one was through our local library. It's great. Anyway,
so it was in person then?
No, it actually wasn't in person.
It was just through the library online.
Library, yeah. You mentioned the word memoir, and people who come to take this class, this workshop, it's not a class, because I'm not teaching writing per se. I work with individuals in that way. I just allow for the practice. I create the structure, the container that allows for the practice of writing. But these aren't people who are necessarily interested in writing their memoir. They're people, and this is what I try and get across when I promote the workshop, that it's an exploration of self. It provides an avenue for exploring yourself. So it's not just people who are, want to put together their whole life story. I have a young woman who's attended several workshops who is writing about what's going on in her life now.
Yeah. So the value of inquiry is Yeah, and I it seems silly that I didn't make the memoir is memories.
That's
So
true.
it's not necessarily that, people join your workshop because they have a desire to complete and write a memoir, but
Right.
it's bite-size memories. It's
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's just a way to, um, yeah, to come to know yourself. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, I mean, that's certainly been my experience when I write about I've written about my grandmother. I had one grandmother who I knew so well. She was a big part of my life. And then the other was much more remote. And writing about this grandmother who was much more remote, so I know very little about her, really, uh, just opens me up to what I do know, even if I'm not aware of what, and ahead of
Yeah,
time that I know that.
yeah.
So, and, this sort of leads back to what we were talking about before you hit recording or earlier on that you might edit out is that knowing your story, in my experience, helps me transcend it. The more I know it, the more familiar I am with it, the more I'm able to not so much let it go, but maybe to integrate it.
To integrate, yes.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
use a favorite word, and then it doesn't have a grip, an unnecessary grip.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Gosh, that's why I see your workshop being having so many different angles and different purposes behind joining something like this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
It's writing, of course, is a piece of it, and photos are a piece of it, but it just seems to me that the experience could end up being something very, very profound and even life changing for people.
it has been for me.
Yeah.
The experience of this kind of writing. I just had a woman in a recent workshop that ended last week, um, and she wanted to write a love letter of sorts to her husband. So she found a photograph, an old photograph. This was just kind of an idea she had. Or maybe, you know what? I take it back. I'm not even sure if she had that idea before she started writing. She found an old photograph of him from early in their days. And it turned into a love letter to him that she's going to give him for Father's Day. I know. And I don't know that she had that intention. I'm not clear. I don't really remember if she had that ahead of time or if that's what it became. Just writing about the memory, right? Describing this is how she started. This isn't how everybody starts, or it's necessary to start. But she started describing what was going on in the photograph, and then naturally took off to, other threads, similar threads through their relationship. It was a beautiful thing. It was really a beautiful thing.
Wow. And a person could actually take that approach to, because as you were saying that, I was thinking I would love to do that for each of my sons.
Well, there you go.
Take a photograph and,
Absolutely.
maybe for their birthday,
Yeah.
write something up with the
Really.
photograph and then give
I
that
love
to
I
them.
love doing that. I
Yeah.
love doing that. Yeah, yeah. I just wrote.
Oh, and my grandsons too. Oh gosh. Now I'm really
Oh,
inspired.
that's right. Yeah. Now you're not going to spend any time on your memoir. You've got to be writing. But a photograph is a beautiful place to start. Although I know when I write to my kids on each of their big birthdays, I don't do it every birthday. Otherwise, I'd be repeating myself and they'd be sick of it. But on the big birthdays,
Yes, yes. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's a beautiful opportunity to really share who, what, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't post those because they'd kill me, but
Yeah. Um, I just want to mention, when you talked about the loss of your son and that you have been writing about that. And if people are interested, they can read about that through medium.com. It kind of
Hmm.
starts there. Um, I just wanted to mention that we know each other and we've been chatting for quite some time. So I've known about that. And so I just didn't want this to kind of come across like,
Irma doesn't care. Irma's unfeeling. I don't think
which,
so.
well, I just wanted to mention
Yeah,
that.
I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. Context is important here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's been, getting back to life, which is an ongoing process after something like that it's challenging in a lot of ways, but the workshop um, has a life of its own, which I'm so very, very grateful for because all I do is press that connect button and I'm connected. And there's just the energy, everyone's different. The energy that people, uh, people create just by being in their little boxes on the screen
Yes.
next to one another. It's becomes a whole little world, as good workshops can do.
Sure. And, it sounds like because of the title, Bite-size Memoir, and kind of the focus of bringing photos and writing about the photos, it seems like the focus is writing, but like you said, you aren't teaching writing necessarily through this workshop. There's a lot in this, and I can feel it. I haven't taken it. I will be participating on June 8th.
Oh, good, good, good.
Yeah, and I can sense and feel the depth of what the experience will be.
Oh, good. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. I hope it doesn't disappoint.
No,
It's
I'm sure it
very,
won't.
it's very much dependent on who the other participants
Sure.
are, but I can say I've never been disappointed.
Mm.
I've never been disappointed. It's like I said, each one obviously has its own, gestalt,
Yeah.
but they're all just because it's genuine. People show up wanting to be real and wanting to be personal and when I say I don't teach writing, I want to be clear that it is about the writing,
Yes.
but there are a lot of methods and techniques that one could share, but this isn't, really the appropriate place for that. It's really more for the practice of writing. And yeah.
So I have a question. So if someone takes your workshop, Bite-size Memoir workshop, and they do see a structure for a complete memoir kind of forming and taking place, can they then contact you outside of the workshop and work with you
Of course.
with guidance towards, your skills and your gift as a writer and editor? They would have.
1,000%. That's what I do.
Okay. Yes.
I love that, and that's what I do. So thank you for highlighting that. Yes, yes. And I often invite people, workshop participants, if they want to just share a final essay with me, and I'm happy to, give my 2 cents from an editorial point of view.
Yes.
What works, what doesn't work, whatever. But that's sort of secondary to the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And going back to what I said about the structure of Instagram, that just sort of lent the kind of concept for this bite-sized memoir. It isn't
How
that
it kind of got started.
yeah, it isn't that people need to write only to 2,200 characters.
Yeah.
It's take it as long or as short as you want. It's your call.
Yeah.
That's just the structure that Instagram lent me that I find very. It's like I find it harder to write longer than that now. It's like, when I'm writing these stories, it's like I have I've done it so often now that it shaped my thinking and my expression, so that I don't know if this is a Buddhist expression or where it's from. And it's not even an expression that I can share with any accuracy, but the concept of, where you dig 10 shallow holes or one deep one. You know what I'm
Yes,
talking
I've
about?
heard of it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is one deep hole, but it's a lot narrow. And that's the sort of the image I have in my head of what this is. So you're not writing. I mean, there's value to writing long and letting something unfold. That's a, valid, beautiful, different approach. This is, you're going deep, fast, and short. But the deep is what counts, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
And I was thinking, if a person feels stuck in their life, kind of at a standstill, I would invite them to find a photograph that kind of reflects what you're feeling and bring that into a workshop such as this, because I think it would be a wonderful way to, if you're feeling stuck or shut down or closed off, that it would be an entryway to start opening up
Absolutely.
without any stress, without any outside force, strictly coming from you, to show up with a photograph and allow yourself to just speak through that photograph. I would think that it would be a wonderful way for a person to open that door.
I think that this one young woman in a recent workshop, who was writing about what was going on in her life now. I think
Yeah.
that's exactly what she did. In fact, one of the photographs she worked with was just a picture of her journal. She took she didn't need a photograph, but she took one of her journal and wrote about that process. And I think it very, very much was helping her process what, this thing that has loomed large in her life. And, conversely, for me, writing about my loss, you talk about being, I don't know if stuck is the right word, but being in a foreign land and not understanding, for me, writing continues to be a way for me to, I don't know if it's so much understand as pin down, define, get a grip on what's going on. And so I've usually write and then find a photograph that I can use to put on Instagram that might help, support the writing. So it's been the opposite. Because I'm a writer and I know that I need to write, the need to write, it lives in me. And it's been, sort of the thing that one of the things that I hold on to as I make my way through this, into a different reality. And then I'll find a photograph. I mean, sometimes there's a photograph that I have to, that springs, the words spring from a photograph. But just as often in writing about my loss, I write and then find the photograph. But the process is the same. It's going deep. It's going deep in a short space, and it's defining a time and a place and a reality for me that I wouldn't be able to define so well without writing about it.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to you saying that, it's kind of like a photographic, active, alive journal.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Well, people have said to me, and I think I wrote this in my recent email, announcing the next workshop, that you should write a memoir. And I say, I think I'm doing that, but I'm not doing it in any consecutive, putting aside my writing about loss, because other people have said you should write a book. And same thing. It's like, maybe that's what I'm doing. That's not my intention. But maybe that's what all these little pieces will add up to. And the same with the memoir, all these photographs from my past that I've written about in completely non-consecutive form. I could pick those up and organize them and whatever. They're there for my family, for my kids, for my grandchildren, God willing, for anybody who wants to know. I have recorded stories of my past, and they can be connected, they can be pulled off Instagram or, published in any way or however. So it's just a question of quantity and linking them together or not, so yeah. It's all possible. It's all possible. It's really, it's funny in a way. I could be a little embarrassed by this, but when I put it in context, it's like our lives, we all hear, I think, a lot about how our attention spans have gotten shorter, and we'll only read so much, and we're watching the screens and everything moves so quickly and yada yada. And this sort of like is part of that. Let's make this smaller so it's more manageable. But it's anything but superficial. It's just
I don't get that sense at all. Not at all. No, the bringing focus to it and bringing structure and safety and all the things that you're bringing into it, it sets the foundation for an ongoing discovery, an ongoing exploration there's nothing shallow about it. There's nothing, no, I think it would give a person more focus and more attention, and instead of speeding up, it's slowing down. It's becoming more present with who you are. The process seems absolutely beautiful to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Your words are great. Your words speak right to it.
And I would imagine if somebody wanted to, instead of going back into past photographs, they could maybe go for a walk in nature or get in touch with what they're feeling in the present moment and take some photos of things that stand out to them, that reflect back to them what they're feeling in the moment, and then
Absolutely.
that into the workshop, like you're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've done that.
Yeah.
And other people have done that in workshops. It's definitely not just about the past. It's whatever you want to bring your focus and your intention to, using the photograph as a jumping off point, and I hadn't thought about this before we talked, or knowing what you want to write about anyway, and then finding a photograph that illustrates it.
Whatever avenue a person enters from. And there is no writing experience necessary, just the desire to begin exploring your story.
Exactly right. No, definitely no experience necessary. And people who say, oh, I can't write, and I've had a number of those. Oh, I'm not a writer, I can't write. The words that emerge are just beautiful. And talk about giving yourself a gift, just to have this concept that, oh, I'm not a writer. And then to, allow yourself this experience and hear by your own sharing, and to hear it reflected in other people's responses. You learn about yourself. You learn, oh, maybe I do have a way with words, or maybe I can wrestle this feeling into a sentence, or
maybe my story is worth sharing and worth other people hearing. And
bingo. That is so key.
Yeah.
That is so key, because how many of us really don't believe it? Just don't believe that our stories are anything special unless something traumatic has happened or awful or whatever. And I find that, I can even minimize that. But, you don't need what people write about and what I've written about are the most mundane, like one of my first pictures was the story of my mother handing me my 10th or 11th birthday cake. I mean, you can't get more, more ordinary than that. And it's the ordinary that is so individual.
Yeah, I actually somehow just saw that photograph and what you wrote about it just yesterday. So I know exactly the one
Funny.
you're talking about. And there's so much going on in that photograph. I mean, your mom chose this big candle to.
Oh, you do remember.
Yeah, just yesterday I saw it. Yeah, and the expression on your face and on her face and what you wrote, it just kind of just brought this completion, like I was in that experience. It was beautiful, beautiful.
I love it. I love it. I think that's the picture I used to write about her yard site. I'm not sure. Anyway, but yes, so it's that we tend to discount our ordinary lives as not worthy of focus or expression or even sharing. And I think it's just the opposite.
It is.
And I think it goes back to that the particulars of each of our own experiences are indeed universal.
Yes.
And what do we need now, especially now, beyond being able to connect with others, instead of feeling so isolated and separate and other? Connection is paramount.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Wow. I think this has been a wonderful conversation and has really presented what you're offering in your workshop, not only in your workshop, but in the business and in what you do and what you're, one of the things that you're passionate about, writing and editing and
Connecting.